Among comedy duos, characters who've managed to build a decent-sized following through their wacky adventures are Bill and Ted. With their time-traveling antics and laid-back attitudes, they charmed viewers and generated laughs in the most unexpected ways. But what makes them so appealing, and what has allowed them to stand out from other teenage protagonists? Well, part of the credit for that goes to their creators, Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. They had originally devised Bill and Ted as part of a comedy routine where they developed their speaking style and penchant for calling things excellent or bogus. Seeing further comedic potential, they started working on a screenplay where the duo traveled back in time and met historical figures. The general concept of Bill and Ted trying to pass a history course in school was always there, but they would revise and flesh out the idea over several drafts. Their script was originally titled Bill and Ted's Time Van, but this was changed to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure after Back to the Future also used a time-traveling vehicle. One of the historical figures they were originally going to bring to the present was Hitler, but Matheson and Solomon recognized the issue of this and removed him from later drafts. Although Attila the Hun would end up in the finished film, and he was not exactly the nicest person either, to put it mildly. Eventually, a telephone booth will be used to travel through time, and to add further stakes, it is revealed that Bill and Ted's music will unite the world and create a future utopia. Thus, it becomes a greater necessity that they get good grades, and Ted does not get sent to military school. The characters are also given the full names Theodore Logan and Bill S. Preston Esquire, the joke the latter obviously being that he just gave himself the Esquire because it sounded fancy. Once famous Italian producer Dino De Laurentiis decided to finance the film, casting began. Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves were cast as Bill and Ted respectively, and immediately formed a bond, thus leading to strong chemistry and a believable friendship on screen. Their casting also led to Bill and Ted being changed from unpopular to well-liked, as the writers felt people hating these two would be unbelievable. And what makes them work is their genuine likability, with Winter and Reeves also finding the right delivery with their surfer dude sounding voices. There is a hope to see them succeed in their mission, and it's fun seeing them make friends with these different people from history. Some of the most enjoyable parts of the movie come from seeing them in the present day, and the writers find a lot of humorous scenarios as they get into hijinks in the mall or the bowling alley. In addition to the aforementioned Attila the Hun, some of the other people Bill and Ted encounter include Abraham Lincoln, Joan of Arc, Napoleon, and Socrates. Socrates. Meanwhile, the person responsible for sending them on this trip through time is Rufus. Played by George Carlin, he becomes responsible for making sure the future goes as planned, so when you think about it, he has the most pressure out of anyone to make sure Bill and Ted succeed. The movie plays with time travel in unique ways as Bill and Ted go back in time to various points, giving them what they need in the future. It's a sort of ridiculous use of the device that would probably cause Doc Brown to rip his hair out, but fits perfectly with these two characters' specific way of thinking. There are other humorous, non-time related jokes, like Bill's father marrying one of their former schoolmates, and the setting of San Dimas, California became such a pivotal part of the film, it will always be connected to Bill and Ted. This despite most of the movie being filmed in Arizona. Overall, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure managed to take this simple premise and created something funny and charming out of it. And again, a large reason is due to Bill and Ted themselves and Winter and Reeves' performances. While maybe not the brightest students at their school, they are still kind-hearted and well-meaning, and have their own unique abilities and ways of thinking that prove useful on their quest through time, resulting in a good history grade, a positive future for everyone, and even 2 princess girlfriends. Once Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure completed its production, the filmmakers were ready to show it to the world. Unfortunately, the De Laurentiis group would start having financial problems, which would affect the planned distribution of the film. They were turned down by several studios who did not quite get the humor and how it appealed to young people. There was a chance it would just sit on a shelf, or some smaller distributor would just release it direct to video. However, following successful test screenings, they managed to get some interest. Nelson Entertainment picked up the rights, with Orion Pictures releasing it in theaters. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure ended up quite a word-of-mouth hit, more than making back its budget, and the executives told Matheson and Solomon to start coming up with ideas for a sequel. Not wanting to just do the same thing again, they wrote Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which went in a much wilder direction than the first movie. It was certainly an ambitious sequel, so ambitious that a lot of the original ideas had to be cut out to accommodate the $20 million budget. Nonetheless, it proved to be a visually interesting follow-up, with Bill and Ted ending up in hell and other locations. Admittedly, I don't think Bogus Journey is nearly as funny as the first movie, and the story gets a bit all over the place, but still has its moments of inspiration. The best parts belong to William Sadler as the Grim Reaper, who's clearly enjoying himself in the role. The idea of Bill and Ted playing board games with him is a funny parody of the Seventh Seal, and just the fact that there's an extended Ingmar Bergman reference in this silly comedy is humorous enough, although I feel the joke works regardless of whether you're familiar with classic Swedish cinema or not. The sequel was an interesting path to take the duo, and while it may not have quite the charm of its predecessor in my opinion, I do understand why its darker, more surreal tone would give it a cult following down the road. Meanwhile, there were also attempts to bring them to the small screen. One was an animated series titled Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, because almost any popular film in the 80s and 90s seemed to get turned into an animated series. The first season aired on CBS with Hanna-Barbera producing the animation, and they even managed to bring in Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, and George Carlin to reprise their roles. I've only watched the first episode, which while a pretty standard Saturday morning cartoon of the time, nonetheless captured the humor and spirit of the movie. Bill and Ted are also the sorts of characters I think lend themselves to a cartoon format. For whatever reason, the second season moved to Fox and changed animation studios to DiC. I cannot comment on the quality of those episodes, but the series did not last very long following the switch. A live-action television series was then produced, also titled Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. Evan Richards, Christopher Kennedy, and Rick Overton, who voiced Bill, Ted, and Rufus in the cartoon's second season, also played those roles here, and the show would naturally have them get into new scrapes with the telephone booth. Most of the episodes had them go through time and encountering historical figures like Elvis Presley, Albert Einstein, and King Arthur. Although in the original unaired pilot, Bill and Ted were transported into a comic book. They even bring one character out of the comic book with the actress depicted in black and white. And there's another episode where they go into a popular soap opera and change the outcome of the storyline, which raises so many questions. Richards and Kennedy try their best to imitate Winter and Reeves, but I think they overdo it just a tad, and while there are a few chuckles, the joke's not anything to write home about. A lot of the episodes follow a basic formula of Rufus going back to the early 90s, giving Bill and Ted a mission to solve so the utopian future can become a reality, and then wacky time travel situations happen. Oddly enough, even though this is clearly set after the movie, the princesses never get a mention. What happened to them? It was a noble effort, but it's not difficult to see why it was quickly cancelled, as the audience would have been too attached to the original actors in the roles. Frankly, did not stand much of a chance for reasons beyond the writer's control. Per that deal with Nelson Entertainment, Fox had to wait a while after Bogus Journey's theatrical run to air the series. When it did finally reach screens, Fox had already lost confidence in it and burned through all 7 episodes during the summer. Even before the show aired, a Fox spokesperson told the press that they did not expect to produce any more episodes. Following the cancellation of the show, it would take a long while for Bill and Ted to make their most triumphant return, although they did have their own stage show at Universal Studios theme parks, and a couple fans even produced a stage musical adaptation that performed a few times in the UK. Boom Comics would also make a few comic books featuring the characters. As for a third Bill and Ted movie, even after Keanu Reeves took on more serious and action roles and Alex Winter shifted towards directing, they retained some interest in returning to those characters, as did writers Bill Solomon and Chris Matheson. However, it would prove tricky getting off the ground. Nelson Entertainment, which owned the rights to Bill and Ted, would cease to exist not long after the release of Bogus Journey, and Orion Pictures would also have financial difficulties. Funnily enough, both of their libraries would end up under the ownership of MGM. However, MGM did not see the potential in a third movie, and so the script was taken to other studios who were also skeptical. However, everyone involved was committed to getting it made, including director Dean Parisot, who signed on in 2012 and stayed with the production the entire time as they looked for financiers. Bill and Ted Face the Music would finally receive a green light, with the film getting a release date in 2020. Well, if ever there was a year where we really needed Bill and Ted, it was that one. As a result, the movie would get a simultaneous release in theaters and VOD, with most opting to see it at home for obvious reasons. The sequel explored the intriguing idea of the pressure placed on these two to write the song that will unite the world and the effect this has on them. That was a natural place to take them. I thought Winter was able to slip back into Bill, but Reeves seemed to struggle a bit at capturing Ted after years of playing characters like Neo and John Wick. I actually found the most enjoyable parts came from Samara Weaving and Jack Haven as Bill and Ted's daughters. I bought these two as their respective offspring, and it was neat seeing the support they showed their fathers. They even have their own fun little time travel subplot. Although I do have a confession to make, which highlights how little I pay attention to current music. When they met Kid Cudi, I thought he was a fictional rapper they made up for the movie. Turns out he is in fact a real person. Silly me. I admit I did not think all the jokes in Face the Music hit, but there were enough humorous bits throughout, and it made for a harmless escapade and reunion with Bill and Ted. Unless something changes in the future, Chris Matheson told Rolling Stone in an interview that he does not have any ideas for a fourth film, and that's probably best for their story to end here. In any case, it says something about their charm and appeal that people continue to look back on Bill and Ted with fondness, and they retain a decent-sized following. And that's certainly excellent.